Welcome back, America. We're here with our friend Jonathan Turley, who you know well, law professor, but he's more than that. He's really a scholar, he's a thinker, he's a philosopher. And I tell you, when he writes a book, I get excited because this is a real tour de force. Rage in the Republic, the unfinished story of the American Revolution. You know, Jonathan, you're not just a professor, you're a scholar, you're a thinker, you're a philosopher. You write beautifully, you present a tremendous amount of historical context for what you say. I want to encourage everybody to go to Amazon.com and grab this book, and you're about to get a little taste of it and see why. First of all, why the title, Rage and the Republic?
Well, thank you very much, Mark. The book really is an effort to look at what were the elements that came together, those unique elements of personalities and events that produced the world's most stable and successful democracy. Part of that was rage. This is a country, like many countries, that was born in revolution. And the test that faced the founders was that it's easy to start a revolution, it's not so easy to end one. That the test is to create a republic out of a revolution, which they succeeded in doing. And the book looks at two revolutions at first, that is the US Revolution and of course the French Revolution. One became a successful democracy, the other became a bloodletting. And it looks at why the American Republic became such a success. And then the second half of the book looks at whether that unique republic can survive in the 21st century at some of the tests that we are facing. But at the end of the day, what this is about the human condition. You know, that's what revolutions are an odd thing. You know, our revolution was in many ways influenced by two figures that I talk about a great deal in the book, Thomas Paine and James Madison. Paine was the righteous rage that gave a voice to the revolution. And it was James Madison who was the pious logic, who tried to show how you had to restrain impulse to preserve a republic and the liberties for everyone.
And you do such a beautiful job of laying that out. These were two truly great men, and you're right, very different personalities and so forth about how they approach things. And I like the way you explain that the French Revolution really was quite different than the American Revolution. And Paine in many ways was quite different than Madison. Paine really was, as you point out in the book, the man for the revolution. And Madison really was the man for the revolution, but really for the Constitution. Isn't that about right?
That's right. What's astonishing about Thomas Paine, because I talk a lot about his life, because he was one of two figures that played a significant role in both revolutions, the other being Lafayette. And Paine was not an advocate of all of those precautions and limitations that Madison insisted on having. And he went to France and he argued for more direct democracy. And it came close to killing him. He came within 24 hours of being guillotined. And so the question that the book raises is, what did we learn from those two revolutions that can help us in the 21st century? But Paine is an amazing figure. You keep in mind that he arrived 2 years before the Declaration of Independence. And when he washed up on our shores, he was a human wreck. He had failed in everything in his life. He'd been fired from every job he ever had. His marriages collapsed. And he appeared before someone in London as a penniless, notorious drunkard, according to many. And someone saw something in Paine, and that was Benjamin Franklin. He saw him in London and sent him to the United States. Within 2 years of his landing, he would be called the penman of the Revolution. And even John Adams, who had a lot of criticism of Paine, relayed to his wife how he was described in his first meeting, Paine that is, as someone with genius in his eyes. And he was. He knew what it took to bring a nation to revolution. But it was Madison who knew how to take a revolution and turn it into a republic.
You talk in the book about basically democracy and mobocracy, and I think that's very relevant today. And again, they kind of go back to the French and the American Revolution. What do you mean by that? And now, how do you explain it in the book?
You know, the framers were most concerned about democratic despotism. They did not want a pure democracy. Everyone would talk about the Athenian democracy, but that was a failure. It resulted in tyranny. And they did not want to replicate what happened in Athens and so many countries because, there was a French figure who was critical to their revolution, who after the terrors remarked that revolution is like Saturn, it devours its own. And that's very true, that in the French Revolution, the so-called mountain, people like Robespierre and Marat, were ultimately guillotined themselves. The revolution devoured them as it devoured others. And so the real test for Madison and others was to avoid a mobocracy, to avoid what was called democratic despotism. And they did that by dividing powers, having checks on powers, having very strong federalism principles in our system. All of that worked to create this amazing new republic. One thing I try to capture in the book is how fascinated people in Europe were of us, that we were considered almost a new species, to the point that a popular Frenchman asked, "What is this then, the American?" They treated us as if we had come fully formed as a new type of human being.
Grab the book, Rage and the Republic. You can get it at Amazon.com. I'm telling you now, you're going to love this book. We'll be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.